Welcome to Future Consideration, SB Nation's weekly NFL draft show. We're getting real close. That's Dan. He is our college football guy.
This is true. Matt, you are an NFL guy, so you're going to control that.
Also true. We're going to start the show off the same way we do every week, which is reviewing, mocking the drafts. Weekly mock draft on SBNation.com.
Yes, we are.
Let's start things off. We'll skip the Jameis Winston at number 1. We've been there before.
Yep.
That's not changing. Number 2, the Titans taking Marcus Mariota. This is a change from previous mock drafts.
Yes.
Certainly a position of need for the Titans, and Mariota, the fastest quarterback, maybe the best quarterback in the draft.
And while the situation isn't the greatest in Tennessee, still not a fan of that coaching staff. They do have an offensive line. They have invested in offense.
Yeah.
It's not the worst possible Washington situation for him to immediately go to. And it makes sense, yes. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. And if Tennessee can make a case for it themselves, hard not to grab that at number 2.
You would like to see Mariota go into an offense more tailored to a skill set.
Yes.
Ken Wisenhunt really does favor the huge, immobile, rocket-armed guy in the pocket, but it could still work.
Yes, he's by no means a reach just because they need a quarterback.
Correct.
Which we've seen in years past. Let's move along.
Yeah, let's bounce around to number 7, the Bears taking Danny Shelton.
Yes.
Big boy in the middle of the defensive line out of Washington.
Productive and aggressive nose tackles, especially running that 3-4 that Vic Fangio is going to run. Not coming along all that often, especially early on. We've seen it in years past with a couple of big guys, but Danny Shelton could be an anchor for years and years to come with an aging, I believe it's Jeremiah now, Ratliff.
Yes. He's going to be 34,
right.
and it's kind of a nice pick. You can bring on the rookie a little bit slowly.
Mm-hmm.
The Bears, historically bad on defense the last couple of years. Fun fact, they allowed 50-plus points in back-to-back games. The first time since 1923 that the Rochester Jeffersons did that.
No!
Yeah.
All right, then they need to improve.
Who isn't a Rochester Jeffersons fan?
Everybody is. Let's stay with large men. Brandon Scherf at number 9 to the
I do
Giants.
like large men, Dan.
The name of our show, we're going to change it from Future Consideration to Large Men.
Giants need help on the offensive line. Brandon Scherf, a very strong man. Giants were 30th in the NFL in yards per carry, 3.6 yards per carry. That's not good. That can stand to be improved. Scherf can help them do that.
Yeah, they've got a Super Bowl winning quarterback. They've got the best young receiver in football.
Beckham.
So, take a weakness and make it a strength. All right. Pass rushing at number 16 seems a little bit weird, but actually may make sense.
The Houston Texans taking Shane Ray out of Missouri. Mizzou, a great place to get your defensive linemen from if you have to just kind of close your eyes and point your finger. A great talent there. Not a huge position of need considering they just spent the number 1 overall pick on Jadeveon Clowney. However, coming back from fracture surgery, that's a long process. And it does, if you can have someone take up additional blockers so that J.J. Watt can run free.
It's never the worst thing to load up on pass rushers. We saw what the Giants did, albeit in a different system, with those 4 guys on the line. If it's just a value play here, you have to take the biggest value. That defense is going to be scary next year.
There's no solution at quarterback for the Texans in this draft, I don't think.
No, okay. Speaking of defense, the Eagles at number 20.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of curious picks, too. The Eagles taking Byron Jones, the cornerback out of UConn.
Yes.
A riser in the draft talk.
A riser, a bit raw. His athleticism cannot be denied. He jumped out of the building at the combine. Very good speed. Could, with Philly specifically, could project as a safety or a nickel corner, depending on how Brandon Boykin looks.
Yeah, it is kind of a curious pick with their signings of Byron Maxwell and Walter Thurman.
Locked in on the outside,
Not the hugest position of need, but because he can do that nickel back or nickel cornerback.
Right.
I almost said nickelback.
Oh, it counts. Especially Philadelphia, loading up on defensive talent, not a bad thing.
Sure. It's curious that they'd use their first pick for that, but sure, I'll go with it. And the Ravens at 26, going with Brashad Perriman out of the wide receiver out of Central Florida.
Quickly rising up boards, very talented, great size, unbelievable speed, a great burst out of his breaks.
Makes sense to replace Torrey Smith, departed for San Francisco.
And Steve Smith is still fun, disappeared sort of after the first few weeks of last year. And
your body doesn't bounce back so quickly in your mid-30s.
You can only count on an angrier old man receiver, which I love, and I want him to succeed because what's better than an angry receiver? But they need you.
Note to Steve Smith, we are not naysaying you. We
like
fully
you.
believe in you and like you very much, sir.
Absolutely. Let's round this out with another receiver.
We don't want him to punch us.
No. DGB.
DGB to the Saints at 31 from Seattle. Now, this mock has the Saints taking Randy Gregory at 13. That satisfies a defensive need for them.
Which we like.
And then this is obviously, while DGB is not a tight end, it certainly has the size, the big target factor to make up for the loss of their all-pro tight end to the Seahawks.
And they lose Kenny Stills and Marcus Colston, probably not going to be there much longer. So DGB,
he's getting up there.
Value-wise, he's great. He's a first-round wide receiver.
It's a huge, huge talent. He just as long as he doesn't find a place to party in New Orleans, it should be fine.
And the tail end of Drew Brees' career, he should have big, interesting young targets.
Yes.
So there it is.
Whew, those are some of the highlights from this week's mock draft. Be sure to check out the full thing from Mocking the Draft at SBNation.com.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the best tight ends in the draft.
Not an exciting class of tight ends.
Tight ends don't typically go in the first round very often.
Right.
This isn't a particularly deep draft for tight ends,
right.
In my opinion. Let's talk about the number 1 tight end, in your opinion, Max Williams out of Minnesota.
Yeah, well, there's clearly in this class, there's no Vernon Davis, there's no Eric Ebron, that crazy freak receiver athleticism in a tight end's body, but Max Williams is really, really good. Unbelievable hands, reliable, huge playmaker.
The extra X in Max is for extra good at catching.
Extra good, yes.
Sure, yeah.
No, he's got great hands. He's not going to be that same kind of vertical threat like we've seen from guys coming out in years past, but a decent enough blocker that he'll be reliable and will, in the red zone, he's dependable, which really, that's what you want from a tight end. You want that target who can find space.
Sure.
Yes.
At number 2, Nick O'Leary out of Florida State.
Right.
Not what you want in a motorcycle rider, but
no,
very
really
good,
bad.
Very good tight end.
Yes, he's very good. And again, another dependable guy. The athleticism is not there. He's probably hit his peak physically, but he's one of those guys that always seem to be like 3rd and 7. Oh, damn it to hell. Nick O'Leary just got an 11-yard
The
catch.
Greg Olsen type?
Yeah, he's that guy that always is 3 yards beyond, always managed to get open, great route runner, and you know what you're going to get in him. So I feel like even though he's lower on a lot of boards, I have him at number 2 just because he seems like a finished product ready to contribute.
All right, and number 3, Clive Walford out of the U.
Yes, he is complete. He is a great blocker. He is fast, and he's as close to that vertical threat tight end as you're going to see in this year's draft. There's still a little bit of questions about hands and focus and being consistent, but if he can correct those with the jugs machine or whatever, he's going to be great. And I do like saying jugs machine on a football show. But no, he is more complete, needs to work on consistency.
I just like that any Miami tight end reminds me of Jeremy Shockey.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is fun.
Yeah.
Number 4, Devin Funchess out of Michigan.
Yes, and it was weird to put him at tight end, weird to put him at receiver. I'll have him here just because he's much more of a mismatch at tight end with his ability and his speed. He's only about 230, 235 pounds. It seems at the moment, but really good route runner, drop C's. Again, another guy with the jugs machine. If he can correct the hands, get more focus, he's not the fastest guy, but he can get behind linebackers.
Funchess scoring touchdowns until you're frontless.
Let's hope that. I like that.
Thanks.
Run them jewels.
Number 5, Ben Koyak out of Notre Dame.
Yes, another dependable guy. Really good size, not a ton of experience, only started for a year. Very, very good hands. He's another guy where he's not going to go up the seam for 27, but on 3rd and 4, he's going to find a space in the zone for 7. And he can go up, is really good at beating corners, beating linebackers, beating safeties for the ball once it's in the air. So frustrating, and if he lands in the right place, perhaps as a number 2 tight end, huge red zone threat.
So no first-round picks here, but certainly the second day of the draft, we're going to see these quality tight ends who can certainly improve an offense and help move the chains.
Yeah, Max Williams, maybe if there's a team that's just a tight end away, because it is a position that if you can find somebody who's versatile, that's a game changer. But there's no Gronk in this draft. There's no Vernon Davis. There's no Jimmy Graham.
Probably for the best that there's not a Gronk in the draft.
I would love there to be just like Arthur Gronkowski in this draft. That'd be amazing.
More Gronks. Those are Dan Rubenstein's top 5 tight ends in this year's draft, and that is another episode of Future Consideration. Join us in 2 weeks
as
we get nearer and nearer to the draft.